But as we move towards a post-racial society, all of us have to really search ourselves to ask the hard questions about our beliefs, our fundamental beliefs about equal access, equal opportunity, and what we really want at the end of the day for a neighborhood and a community and a world in which we live, a global village that is browning as we speak. And I think we've got to figure that one out, because for the majority community, who will very, very soon be the minority community, we've got to figure out how to do that delicate balancing act, and that the oppressed do not take on the clothing of the oppressor. And so organizations like the NAACP and Urban League and others need to be able to articulate a vision of new opportunities, new investments, new priorities, and a value proposition that all can buy into and believe in.
So talk to me, if you will, a bit about the idea of what you see if one assumes that you cannot control the mindset of an individual. Mm-hmm. As I said, in the 50s and 60s, the fight was for desegregation. The fight was for to eradicate separate but equal and make it along the lines of equal opportunity for all. As you look at today, are there one or two issues beyond just the mindset of a person that you see as paramount to deal with for the organization and, as you say, for the betterment of the country?
I think as we move forward, economic justice and economic opportunity is clearly the next frontier on the civil and human rights forefront. I think what we all have learned through this economic stimulus package is that all of us are just one paycheck out of poverty, if we really think about it. And our ability to be successful in this world is really, it's a very tenuous situation. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, Latinos, and Asians are losing their homes across the board. It's no respect of color. And we're all finding ourselves in very, very difficult straits. And so how do we then move the bar forward and find a way to solve the problems together? I think it's really what we need to try to look at.
You also see at times like that when everyone is in the same boat, the boat gets a bit crowded.
Yes, it does.
And frankly, when the boat gets a little bit crowded, tension gets heightened. The idea of being courteous kind of drops out of the boat. So what's the importance of an organization like yours to make sure that everyone understands that really the betterment for all of us is to walk this crooked road together and find the straight and narrow? How do you convince those who will suggest that now that I'm in the boat with you, doesn't matter what I said about your bootstraps, I don't have bootstraps and I'm in trouble too?
I think that's a tough one, Ed, to really try to figure out how do we manage competing priorities in this nation. President Obama is having that fundamental problem now. What goes first? And who is saved first? And who gets thrown out of the boat and who stays in the boat? And I think the continuous opportunity to have conversations, real hard conversations, to ask the penetrating questions and really work together to solve our problems collectively is really, really going to be what saves us as we move forward.
How much relevance is it in, you mentioned this question, the idea of wouldn't it be great if the Urban League didn't have to exist, if the NAACP didn't have to exist, but there are those who argue, whether it's from civil rights leaders to those who run the organizations, that no one wants to walk their way out of a job, and that these groups only want to see it get so good because then those who are employed by would have to go out and find other means of. How much of that is just a cynic's inability to understand the passion from most people who join these groups, or is there a sense of not the want to stay in misery, but the want to stay in an organization that many of these people see as viable, and maybe, as we saw with a generation who voted for Obama, just never believed that things will change?
I guess particularly with an organization like the NAACP, it is a volunteer organization. We have about 75, 80 paid staff in our Baltimore headquarters. We're very lean and mean at this time. but the over 250,000 members of the organization are volunteers. They go to work every day, and they use their free time and in-between time and off time to devote to this cause. It's really a passion, and it's a labor of love, because if you really believe in the dream and the opportunity of what this organization purports to afford to its memberships and the dream it espouses to the nation, I think it keeps you grounded and it keeps you really engaged in the process.
Is there a need to move forward and disassociate not just the organizations with race? As we noted, it helps all, but it's still very much seen as an African American organization. There's the whole idea, the argument of Black History Month, and whether in fact you do a disservice because people don't see it always as American history, which it is, and I'm not sure how you delineate it outside of the idea of the majority of the people that you talk about in February are African Americans. Obama was masterful in minimizing race enough to make whites comfortable, but not doing so at the detriment of making blacks feel like you're, quote, selling out. So how does an organization do that? Can you? Do you have to?
I think at the NAACP, the way we deal with that subject is that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, where colored people come in all colors. And so that's very broad, very embracing, and it speaks to, as I've shared before, the browning phenomenon of America in the global village that we live in. I think as we will continue to deal with this issue of race, if it's viewed through the lens of bigotry and hatred, if we're able to move the bar and think about this next frontier, this next civil and human rights frontier from an economic perspective, I think then we would have made great strides. Race will be with us. Those who say that we live in a colorblind society, I don't believe that, because when I come around the corner, you see me. When you come around the corner, I see you, and I see you for who God made you to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we need to embrace all of the diversity that's in the world that we have. However, it's what type of value system we place on what we see as we move forward. But I think there are too many people who are falling through the cracks in our society, and the gaps are getting larger, particularly for those who are black and brown and yellow. And that's where we need to do something about this kind of economic issue. And that's why we're pleased to partner with our sister organization, who will be 100 next year, and celebrate their centennial, about really trying to engage all Americans in the economic mainstream of a society.
All right, let me put you in a place that I'm going to admit is an unfair place to put you in. That is just to speak, though, because we ask not to speak as a monolith, whether it be race or gender or the like, but I'm going to ask you to do that, if you will. As we all look at the idea of change in this country, for sports fans, the NBA All-Star game was this weekend, and Allen Iverson, who, for those of us who remember, was one of the very first NBA players to have tattoos adorn a majority of his body, and wore cornrows when now it's commonplace it wasn't. He has cut all of his cornrows off, and he has a short crop haircut, and he said, hey, Obama's in, and so now there's time for change. And so now, when I see it even reaching that sense, or I have a conversation with friends or relatives, there is this sense and want for change, whether it be African Americans as a collective, or maybe whites trying to view racism, color in a different way. What would you like to see first from white America in terms of a change by means of either how they've viewed the African American community or viewed organizations like the NAACP or racism? What would you like to see as a monolith suggesting that that's unfair? What would you like to see?
Well, Ed, you talked about Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks, who throughout his tenure at the NAACP called upon young men to pull up their pants and turn around their caps. So that is nothing new. I think it was something that with Barack coming and the energy that was behind his message of change that really calls young people to think differently about what they look like. But it also challenges married